You're joining us here for a non-stop coverage of the war playing out in the Middle East. And we're cutting across straight to big breaking news that's coming in. The Israeli military has confirmed that it's now killed the head of Hezbollah's intelligence in Beirut. Israel had struck the Lebanese capital, and as a result, the Hezbollah Intel HQ was targeted and the Intel chief has been eliminated. So you see now Israel going ahead and fighting all of their enemies. If on one side they're hitting and continuing their strikes against Iran, now you're also seeing strikes against Lebanon, particularly to target Hezbollah bases. This comes at a time when there have been reports suggesting that Hezbollah has also been firing missiles in Israel's direction, some parts of northern Israel particularly being hit. Remember that the Lebanese government did issue a statement saying they're urging Hezbollah not to indulge in firing missiles at Israel, and also urged for dialogue. But amid that, Israel taking a no-nonsense approach, which is why the big update that's coming in is that as a result of strikes in Beirut, in the Lebanese capital, the Hezbollah Intel headquarters was targeted, decimated, and the Intel chief has been eliminated. So Israel going all out right now. It hasn't stopped them, the fact that Iran is now firing counter missiles. It hasn't stopped Israel from going ahead and continuing the offensive against the likes of the Hezbollah. The big update that's just come in is that the Hezbollah Intel chief has also been eliminated. The UK base in Cyprus has been attacked by Iranian drones. Reports suggesting that a drone strike has hit Britain's Royal Air Force base in Cyprus, causing some damage. But we can confirm for you right now that reports suggest there have been no casualties whatsoever. Britain's Defense Ministry has also confirmed the drone strike by Iran. Now, this is the Iranian-made Shahid drone, which is being used for most of the precision strikes by Iran. At this point, it's unclear exactly where it's been fired from, because Cyprus is quite a distance from Iran. For them to reach right up to that location, there's a big question mark on where their drones, missiles are being fired from. No clarity just yet, but a drone strike has been confirmed at the UK base. Remember that the United Kingdom has called for complete evacuation of its base in Cyprus, and that's because there were reports that suggested that Iranian drones were headed towards that direction, were headed towards that base. That confirmation coming in now that one drone has managed to hit the base. No casualties, but there is going to be infrastructural property damage. Base authorities have advised residents near that area. This is in Akrotiri in Cyprus. They've been advised, all residents there, to shelter in peace and ensure that they are in a place that's safe until further notice. And that's because there is a suspicion that more drone strikes could be attempted by Iran. At this point, remember that UK has said that they will immediately evacuate this base. That's led by itself to a whole lot of outrage, with the likes of Donald Trump calling out the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer for his particular decision. In Cyprus, also things heating up. In the last 24 hours, Iran has managed to go beyond just the Gulf countries that we've seen being attacked previously. Now, Shahid drones. On your screens is the massive display that Iran put out in a video, clearly meant to send out a message to its enemies. Those drones have been used to also attack the UK base in Cyprus. But let me break down for you exactly how we've been seeing Iran going all out in this conflict. They know that this is do or die for them, which is why you're seeing so many of the countries being attacked right now. You look at right now the details we're putting out on our screens. Israel, 200 plus missiles and 12 plus drones have been fired in Israel's direction. As far as the United Arab Emirates goes, particularly US bases there and some high-profile establishments, 137 missiles and 209 drones have been fired. In Bahrain, 49 missiles and 9 drones. Very telling images that have come in from Bahrain of how one missile has hit the US base as well. In Iraq, there have been 7 missile volleys, dozens of drones. It's a drone swarm of sorts that Iran is using to strike many of these countries. In Jordan, there have been 13 missile strikes, 36 drones that have been used. Kuwait, multiple missiles. We don't have an exact count yet. We're waiting for that word from the Kuwaiti government. 24 drones have been used. In Qatar, 66 missiles have been fired in their direction. I will remind you that in most of these countries, while these missiles, drones have been fired, they have successfully intercepted as well, which is why you don't see widespread damage. So those numbers can be alarming. Many of them, I will reiterate, have been intercepted. In Oman, 3 drones have been fired in Oman's direction by Iran. Cyprus, 2 missiles. We'll update that also because there is now a confirmed drone strike as well. Saudi Arabia, 2+ missiles. We're not sure if it's missiles or drones, but again, Iran has gone after Saudi Arabia. Syria too. There's been 1 missile at least that has been confirmed. Now, amid this, I want to talk about the other big headline that's emerged, or what happened in Kuwait, where an F-15 was seen coming down, crashing in Kuwait. There were a lot of questions about what led to that exact moment. You see how it just essentially free falls and crashes. The pilots are safe, by the way. You see that in the footage. Now, shockingly, it's not just 1 jet. It's 3 in all. And US has confirmed that these crashes were a result of friendly fire.
The war between the US-Israel combination and Iran is widening across West Asia. On day 3 of the conflict, the skies turned volatile. A video showing an American F-15 fighter jet crashing in Kuwait emerged. The video shows the fighter jet descending rapidly before crashing. Initial reports suggested the pilot ejected safely, with videos circulating online showing him on the ground and being given shelter inside a car. The cause of the crash, however, remains unclear, although initial speculation points to possible friendly fire, suggesting the aircraft may have been engaged by a Patriot air defense system, a US-made platform designed to intercept incoming missiles and hostile aircraft. But Kuwait's subsequent confirmation that more than 1 aircraft had crashed has made those claims uncertain. Kuwait's defense ministry says not 1 but multiple American F-15 fighter jets crashed. It added that all crew members were safe and investigations are underway. The Kuwait Integrated Petroleum Industries Company says the debris fell inside the Mina Al Ahmadi refinery, injuring 2 workers. Air defense systems such as the Patriot rely on an advanced radar and encrypted communication to identify a friend or a foe before launching interceptor missiles. Friendly fire incidents, while embarrassing and a cause of concern, are not uncommon during periods of intense conflict. US CENTCOM has now confirmed that 3 F-15 fighter jets were shot down in Kuwait due to friendly fire. So what really happened in the skies over Kuwait? Was it hostile fire, a technical failure, or a case of friendly fire in the fog of war? Bureau Report, India Today.
So the update that's come in post that report being filed is that, yes, it's very much friendly fire. So that mystery over what led to that crash, that's finally been cleared up by America itself. It's not just 1 F-15, but 3 in all that crashed, 6 pilots, all of them are safe. But let's get you details really that we know right now about what played out. I have Sandeep Punithan with me, joining me here in the studio. Sandeep, you have a statement that's coming from US that only perhaps leads to more questions about how something like this could have happened, of 3 F-15s coming crashing down in Kuwait. What exactly do they mean when they say friendly fire here?
Well, Akshita, this is almost unprecedented, at least in the 21st century. 3 jets being knocked down by, a ground-based air defense system, which is supposed to be on your side. Right? That's why these incidents are called blue-on-blues or friendly fire. And as someone who's spoken to pilots who've been at the receiving end of this, there's nothing friendly about friendly fire, right? That's just a euphemism. The fact is that 3 jets went down, 3 Strike Eagles went down, 3 very capable frontline US fighter aircraft, fighter bombers went down. These were the aircraft that the US is using to strike at Iran. Now, obviously, there is going to be a court of inquiry to go into the reasons for this. And it is actually adds to the US's list of such aircraft losses. There have been some very unprecedented losses very recently, as recent as 2025, when the carrier Harry S. Truman that was operating in the Red Sea lost 3 F-18s. In fact, one of them was downed by friendly fire again when another aircraft, or when one of the warships mistook it for an enemy aircraft and fired at it, the F-18. The F-18 was, knocked out of the sky. The pilots ejected, and it very nearly brought down a second F-18 as well. And there were 2 other incidents relating to the same carrier when, one F-18 missed the arrestor wire and fell off the aircraft, and another one where the carrier was trying to evade the Houthi missile attacks, another aircraft fell off. But this kind of a incident in just a span of a few minutes, 3 aircraft being knocked out of the sky by your allied missile system, that's unprecedented.
There is mechanism.
Yes.
For something like this to never actually happen.
Absolutely, and these are both American-made systems. The F-15 is a Boeing aircraft. It's made by Boeing Corporation. McDonnell Douglas, now Boeing, and the Patriot is made by Raytheon. Now that is also another American-made hardware. Now that is a very capable surface-to-air missile system, and both of these would have what is called IFF, in identification friend foe modules. Now this ensures that there is no accidental fire, no targeting of your own aircraft, because when there is a fog of war, as they call it, where you don't know where your friends are, where your enemies are, and everything on your radar screen appears to be an enemy. And especially in a situation like this, in a dense condition of fighter jets flying about, missiles and drones being thrown at each other. In such conditions, there would be confusion. And precisely to prevent this kind of confusion is why aircraft have IFF systems on board, identification friend foe systems. It's a module which broadcasts a certain frequency down to the ground control, down to the missile batteries, so that they know that this is one of ours. We cannot lock on, we can't fire on them. And obviously this Board of Inquiry will look into the reasons why that IFF was not functioning. Either it was switched off, or there was some kind of failure, or the Patriot battery on the ground, how that could fire, how the missile could actually lock on. As you've seen, in a few minutes, if 3 aircraft could be knocked out of the sky, that tells you how lethal the Patriot is. It's a tragedy that it happened to be, shooting down one of your own. But fortunately, the 6 pilots, that 2 pilots per Strike Eagle. In fact, 1 pilot and 1 WASO, weapon systems officer, on each Strike Eagle. They all, got away safely. So that's the bright side of it. But it's unbelievable. It's
something like this
failure. It's a catastrophic failure, on the part of the U.S. and its coalition forces. Obviously, we don't know who was behind the Patriot. Was this a Kuwaiti Patriot system? Was it manned by the United States? Was it a combination of both? We don't know, and that will come out in the court of inquiry.
They haven't given any clarity on that. They've just said that this is by the Kuwaiti Air Force. That's all that we know. And beyond that, also worst possible time, because this is in the midst of a war, that you've got 3 crucial assets, air assets, that have crashed, that are no longer part of your arsenal. But I would like to also take you back to how US President Donald Trump, and this was during the India-Pakistan war, during Operation Sindoor, when Trump constantly said that several Indian jets had been shot down. The reported number, of course, varied across different statements of his own. Sometimes it was 3 to 4, sometimes 6 to 7, sometimes 11. We wonder what he has to say now about these 3 F-15s, and if those numbers will vary as much.
11 jets were shot down, very expensive jets. And they were all in, both of them were all in, and now they're not. 11 jets were shot down, very expensive jets. And they were all in, both of them were all in, and now they're not.
Okay, let's move on and also talk about the other big aspect of what's been playing out in the Gulf. With Iran expanding essentially the theater of war, the Gulf is on high alert. US forces in particular have been targeted in Bahrain. The US embassy has been hit in Kuwait. Missiles, drone strikes have been reported in several parts in Dubai. The last few days, we've seen it today at least, was largely peaceful. And then you have in Beirut drones and rockets appearing over the Lebanese capital as well. Let's get you all of those updates of what's really been playing out. Those images are on your screens of what's happened in the last few hours. In Kuwait, you've had a US embassy being hit. But Sandeep, the question that does come up when you see all of these images is whether Iran is still focusing only and restricting these attacks only to US bases, or it's gone beyond that?
Well, it's clearly escalated beyond just US bases. If you look at the kind of targeting that Iran has done, there's two aspects to their targeting. One is, of course, the US bases, the US military installations, the US radar installations that have been struck. And the other aspect, of course, is the commercial targeting of oil tankers and that would be the economic leg of their targeting. Now, this is commerce destruction to attack at the the arteries of the Gulf, which is the Straits of Hormuz. And the fact is that 20% of the world's oil and natural gas flows through that very constricted Straits of Hormuz. They're one of the most significant waterways in the world. And Iran has been making a point by tapping at all of these oil tankers.
Sandeep, a big breaking news that's coming in. Prime Minister Modi, we're getting that news break that Prime Minister Modi had two very important telephone conversations. He's spoken with the King of Bahrain, King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. He's also spoken with the Crown Prince, the Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, MBS Mohammed bin Salman. Prime Minister Modi in this conversation has condemned the attacks on both these countries. So that's Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. He's discussed the well-being of the Indian community in both countries. Sizable Indian population in both of these countries. And that's something that the government has been watching out for. He made a mention of it in the Cabinet Committee on Security meet also that happened earlier. But as the information we're picking up right now is that the Prime Minister has spoken to these Gulf leaders, to Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, sending out a very clear message of condemnation on the attacks that both these countries have suffered as a result of the conflict over the weekend that's broken out. He's also discussed the well-being of the Indian community in both countries. We'll get in our MEA correspondent on this as well. But Sandeep, there's been a lot of questions right now about how India is looking at what's playing out in the Middle East. What kind of a stand will they take? And as far as India is concerned, the Prime Minister said we're on the side of peace. And in the course of that is why we're seeing these conversations perhaps also happening.
Absolutely, Akshita. And the Prime Minister has said this before, that now is not the time for war. And I think that is a line that he has consistently pushed ever since he, said that to President Putin, and that's been, 4 years now. Now, at a time when the region is in flames, literally, by what's going on in the last 2 or 3 days, it must be emphasized that India is friends with all of the regional countries. We have no enemies in the Gulf, and that is one reason that we are held in such good stead. We are friends with Saudi Arabia. We're even better friends with the United Arab Emirates. Iran is a close friend and a partner of ours. We are friends of all countries in the region. So that's Prime Minister Modi out there reaching out to the Gulf GCC countries, the Gulf monarchies, and of course balancing it by talking to Iran as well. We have sent our delegations to Iran, to let them know that we stand by them as well. So it's a tough time for India and a particularly trying time for Indian diplomacy, given the fact that we have such a large diaspora there in the Gulf right now, and they're extremely vulnerable. If the war continues, they could be affected. There would be contingency plans already in place. The Indian military that you saw there with the Prime Minister, they would already be working on contingencies, particularly the Air Force and the Navy. If there's an airlift to be done, if there is a sea lift to be done, if there's a combined air and sea lift to be done, then the Indian military will have to step up and handle operations after that. I'm sure all these options are being discussed even as we speak, actually.
No, and there's been, the government has been very actively coordinating with many of the embassies, trying to ensure that all necessary help is given to the Indians who are currently in these countries. And if they sense that any of them are really in danger, immediate help will be provided. But for now, the messaging has been very clear from the Indian government that if you do need anything, reach out to us, but that the Indian military will have to step up and It's not in a situation where there is an evacuation that's necessary right now. The focus is on providing all necessary help and assistance, but the message also from the Indian government right now is that they're closely monitoring the situation with their counterparts, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Bahrain. We've seen a conversation previously with the UAE as well. So these conversations will keep happening in the course of the next few days as well, because there are so many Gulf countries that have been affected as a result of this war, and the Indian government making it a point to send out a message that irrespective of what's playing out, India stands for peace. And for many of these countries who've kind of essentially been dragged into this conflict, the government is sending out a message of solidarity with them, which is why, importantly, whether it's the conversation with Bahrain or the conversation with the Saudi Arabian Prime Minister Modi has condemned the attacks that have taken place on both of these countries. The war is still underway. And the message from India is very clear that any violence, any attacks, we will condemn unequivocally. And that's the message that's gone in through these particular conversations as well. We know that previously there has been a conversation also that's been had with the UAE. But Sandeep, also on the point that you're seeing many of these world leaders having these conversations. Prime Minister Modi has done it. You've had the Russian president also speaking to some of them. I'll bring in Pranay Upadhyay of India Today Global on this broadcast. Pranay, just for those updates of what you've picked up on the conversation the Prime Minister Modi has had with these leaders.
In last 12 hours, Akshita, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had phone conversation with 4 leaders, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and UAE President MBZ. And today, Prime Minister Modi called up the Sultan of Bahrain and also the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. And these are very important and very crucial conversations, because on one side, Prime Minister Modi condemned the attack on these countries, where a large number of civilian population and civilian areas have also been targeted. And besides that, obviously, the Government of India has its own concern regarding Indians in these countries, because in Bahrain, there is a large population of Indians. In Saudi Arabia, in UAE, around 45 lakh Indians are there. Many Indians are stranded. Yesterday, Prime Minister Modi chaired a 2.5-hour-long Cabinet Committee on Security meeting, wherein the plans to evacuate or safe evacuation of Indians were also discussed. And in fact, the senior military commanders were also there, including Chief of Defence Staff, and 3 service chiefs were also there. And in fact, the Defence Ministry have been asked to work out plans that how we can evacuate those who are stranded in these countries, and especially in the Gulf region.
All right, Pranay, thanks very much for getting us those updates. We're going to track very closely all the steps that are taken by India in the course of this conflict. There have been a lot of questions being asked about what India's stand is on this war. The Prime Minister put out a message earlier today when he was issuing the joint statement with the Canadian Prime Minister, where he said very clearly that India is on the side of peace. That's our stated position through and through all of these conflicts that we've been seeing in the last few years. And as we get you all of the updates that are coming in right now on the conflict, let's cut across live now to a briefing.
To make a peaceful and sensible deal. But Tehran was not negotiating. They were stalling, buying time to reload their missile stockpiles and restart their nuclear ambitions. Their goal, hold us hostage, threatening to strike our forces. Well, President Trump doesn't play those games. And as Secretary Rubio said after the Maduro raid, if you don't know, now you know. President Trump puts America and Americans first. He doesn't hesitate, and neither do our troops. The mission of Operation Epic Fury is laser-focused. Destroy Iranian offensive missiles, destroy Iranian missile production, destroy their navy and other security infrastructure, and they will never have nuclear weapons. We're hitting them surgically, overwhelmingly, and unapologetically. With every passing day, our capabilities get stronger and Iran's get weaker. We set the terms of this war, from start to finish. Our ambitions are not utopian. They are realistic, scoped to our interests and the defense of our people and our allies. Speaking of people, we hope the Iranian people take advantage of this incredible opportunity. President Trump has been clear, now is your time. To Iranian security forces, Choose wisely. President Trump has also been clear about your fate in either direction. To the media outlets and political left screaming endless wars, stop. This is not Iraq. This is not endless. I was there for both. Our generation knows better, and so does this president. He called the last 20 years of nation-building wars dumb, and he's right. This is the opposite. This operation is a clear, devastating, decisive mission. Destroy the missile threat, destroy the Navy, no nukes. Israel has clear missions as well, for which we are grateful. Capable partners, as we've said since the beginning, capable partners are good partners. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force. America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history. B-2s, fighters, drones, missiles, and of course, classified effects. All on our terms, with maximum authorities. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars. We fight to win, and we don't waste time or lives. As the president warned, an effort of this scope will include casualties. War is hell, and always will be. A grateful nation honors the 4 Americans we have lost thus far and those injured. The absolute best of America. May we prosecute the remainder of this operation in a manner that honors them. No apologies, no hesitation, epic fury for them and the thousands of Americans before them, taken too soon by Iranian radicals. Before I turn it over to General Kane for the operational update, let me speak straight to you, the Joint Force, our warriors on the front lines. This is your moment. This is the generational turning point America has waited for since 1979, and since the rudderless wars of hubris, my generation, our generation, endured. Don't listen to the noise. Just stay focused. Our commander-in-chief is steady at the wheel. We face a determined enemy, but you are better. But we must prove it every single day. History doesn't care if we're tired, if we're scared, or if the fight feels big. It demands warriors who rise anyway. Peace through strength, the warrior ethos, lethality, unity of purpose, those are not slogans. They're the beating heart of what it means to wear the uniform, that uniform. You think clearly under fire, you act decisively in chaos, you uphold the Constitution, and you uphold our country without hesitation. We are not defenders anymore. We are warriors, trained to kill the enemy and break their will. History is watching. Be the force you swore an oath to be, focused, disciplined, lethal, and unbreakable. We will finish this on America First conditions of President Trump's choosing. Nobody else's, as it should be. And know this above all, President Trump and I have your back, always. Through fire, through criticism, through fake news, through everything. We unleash you because you are the best, most powerful, most lethal fighting force the world has ever seen. May Almighty God watch over you and his providential arms of protection extend over you. Godspeed, warriors, and keep going. General Kane, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everyone. The purpose of my portion of the briefing today is to update you and the American people on the actions taken thus far. The briefing will discuss the preparation, the planning, setting the force, the early operations, and how we're assessing the progress thus far. So let's get started. On Saturday, 28 February, at 01:15 Eastern Standard Time, 9:45 a.m. local Tehran time, on the orders of the President of the United States, U.S. Central Command, under the command of United States Navy Admiral Brad Cooper, commenced Operation Epic Fury. As I said, I'm going to walk you through the initial phases of the operation. But first, I want to express my deep condolences and the condolences of the Joint Force to the Department of War personnel killed and wounded in actions thus far. As the Secretary said, they're heroes and represent the best of our nation has to offer. They're true examples of what selfless service means. Our deepest and heartfelt condolences are with their families, their friends, and their units. We grieve with you, and we will never forget you. Additionally, I stand here before you today grateful for each service member, planner, logistician, operator across our joint force, for our Department of War civilians, our intelligence community teammates, our interagency teammates who continue to stand in harm's way alongside us. I am proud of all of you as you take the fight to the enemy, and we are the best in the world at integrating, period. I want to extend my personal gratitude to the dedicated commanders and senior enlisted leaders and the enlisted members of the Joint Force who are fighting this fight across the CENTCOM AOR. In addition to Admiral Cooper and Fleet Master Chief Compton, I want to highlight a few today. U.S. Army Central Command Commander Lieutenant General Pat Frank, who, along with his team, are fighting the counter-missile and counter-drone fight. United States Navy Central Command Commander Vice Admiral Kurt Renshaw and his team, who are engaged with the Iranian Navy and projecting American naval combat power from the seas. And United States Air Force Central Command Commander Lieutenant General Derek France and his leadership team, who are crushing Iranian targets from the air. I want to highlight the support to the CENTCOM fight from other combatant commands who are directly involved with this effort, to include U.S. Spacecom, U.S. Cybercom, and U.S. EUCOM. I also want to specifically call out United States Transportation Command and U.S. STRATCOM for their contributions to this fight. We cannot project American combat power at the time and place of our choosing without both. And finally, I want to express how deeply thankful I am for the continued service and sacrifice of the entire Joint Force and their families. Their unwavering commitment and dedication are the cornerstones of this effort. So let me start with a few details. First, to be clear, as the Secretary said, this is not a single overnight operation. The military objectives that CENTCOM and the Joint Force have been tasked with will take some time to achieve, and in some cases will be difficult and gritty work. We expect to take additional losses, and as always, we will work to minimize U.S. losses. But as the Secretary said, this is major combat operations. So let me talk about the preparation and the planning. On February 28th, the full strength of America's armed forces came together in a unified purpose against a capable and determined adversary. The United States Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard, and our reserve components integrated across our combatant commands and began coordinated operations with the Israeli armed forces of an unprecedented scale. As the Secretary laid out, our military objectives are clear. Our mission is to protect and defend ourselves and, together with our regional partners, prevent Iran from the ability to project power outside of its borders, and be ready for follow-on actions as appropriate. Across every domain, land, air, sea, cyber, the U.S. Joint Force delivered synchronized and layered effects designed to disrupt, degrade, deny, and destroy Iran's ability to conduct and sustain combat operations. On the U.S. side, this marked the culmination of months and in some cases years of deliberate planning and refinement against this particular target set. From precision strikes against key military infrastructure to persistent intelligence and targeting integration to the close coordination of the components across vast distances, this operation again demonstrated America's reach, readiness, and professionalism, and that of our joint united force. It was historic not only in the operational scope, but in the level of joint integration displayed across every element of the joint force. And as I said earlier, this work is just beginning and will continue. So now to talk a little bit about setting the force and setting the theater. On the order of the Secretary of War over the last 30 days to reinforce deterrence and provide the President with credible options should action be required, the Joint Force began to systematically reposition assets and personnel across the region. These movements ensured that U.S. forces remained postured, protected, and ready to respond decisively for any emerging threat. This deployment included thousands of service members from all branches, hundreds of advanced fourth and fifth generation fighters, dozens of refueling tankers, the Lincoln and Ford Carrier Strike Group and their embarked air wings, sustained flow of munitions, fuel, supplies, all supported with command and control, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance network. And the flow of forces continues today. In fact, Admiral Cooper will receive additional forces even today. This rapid buildup of forces demonstrated the joint forces' ability to adapt and project power at the time and place of our nation's choosing. I want to highlight a couple specific cases for you. The Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, which many of you know was down in the Western Hemisphere, redeployed across the Atlantic to set the theater. The ship, her crew, their families, and the entire strike group took a deep breath and, as they always do, began planning to conduct combat operations. The integrated Reserve and National Guard forces have continued to demonstrate the value of America's reserve forces, including the Wisconsin Army National Guard operating in Kuwait and Iraq, and Air National Guard units from a variety of states to include Vermont and Virginia. In the case of the Vermont Air National Guard and the 158th Fighter Wing, they were mobilized for Operation Absolute Resolve and then were tasked to take their F-35As across the Atlantic instead of going home to be prepared to support this operation. The same is with our Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve Command tanker and mobility forces, who stepped right out of their civilian jobs to deploy and to protect the region. Lastly, I want to highlight the unsung heroes of warfare, our American logisticians and sustainment force, those who quietly work every day behind the scenes to project and sustain America's combat power. Our leaders from World War II were right when they said professionals do logistics. As regional tensions rose, the Joint Force elevated our force protection measures on the order of the Secretary and repositioned discreetly civilians and
So that's a crucial briefing there by Pentagon, where they're speaking about where really things stand to the conflict, highlighting that, yes, they do foresee some casualties on their end, but reiterating that the reason they saw the need for this kind of a war and conflict is because Iran was nowhere near going ahead and having any dialogue on their nuclear program.